2 weeks before my wedding, I opened my bedroom door and found my fiancé with my best friend. I did not scream. I did not throw anything. I picked up my phone, opened our wedding folder, and canceled the venue while they were still trying to put their clothes back on. By sunrise, every reservation was gone, my suitcase was packed, and I had disappeared. What neither of them knew was that the affair was only the first betrayal I uncovered. Hello, my name is Natalie Brooks. I was 34 years old when the life I had planned for 5 years collapsed in less than 5 minutes. At the time, I lived in Charlotte, North Carolina, with my fiancé, Grant Mercer. Grant was charming in a quiet, believable way. He remembered birthdays. He sent flowers to my mother. He held doors open for strangers. When he proposed, he arranged candles across the rooftop of the restaurant where we had our first date. Everyone called him dependable. My best friend, Lauren Pierce, had known me since college. She helped me choose my wedding dress, planned my bridal shower, and cried when I asked her to be my maid of honor. I trusted them both completely. That was my first mistake. My second mistake was coming home early. I was supposed to spend 3 days in Atlanta finalizing a contract for the InDesign firm I had built from the ground up. The client signed sooner than expected, so I changed my flight and decided not to tell Grant. I imagined surprising him with takeout from his favorite Thai restaurant. Instead, I surprised him with Lauren. The first thing I noticed when I entered our townhouse was her handbag on the kitchen counter. It was red leather with a gold clasp. I had given it to her for her birthday. At first, I told myself she must have stopped by to discuss wedding details. Then I saw 2 glasses beside the sink and Grant's tie on the floor near the stairs. The house was too quiet. I walked upstairs slowly. My heartbeat did not race. It became strangely heavy, as if my body already knew the truth and was trying to protect my mind from it. The bedroom door was not fully closed. I heard Lauren laugh. It was a soft laugh I had heard hundreds of times. At dinners, on vacations, during late-night conversations when she promised that no matter what happened, we would always protect each other. I pushed the door open. Grant froze beside the bed. Lauren pulled the sheet to her chest. For 3 seconds, none of us spoke. Then Grant said the most predictable words in human history. "Natalie, I can explain." I looked at him, then at Lauren. She had been wearing the earrings I bought for her to wear at my wedding. I turned around and walked downstairs. Grant followed me, buttoning his shirt. "Please," he said. "Just give me 5 minutes." Lauren came behind him wearing my robe. That detail hurt more than I expected. My robe, my bedroom, my fiancé, my best friend. All of them used without permission. I sat at the kitchen island and opened the wedding spreadsheet on my phone. Grant put both hands on the counter. "You're in shock." "No," I said. "I'm finally paying attention." I called the venue first. The coordinator answered cheerfully and asked whether I was calling to confirm the final guest count. "I'm calling to cancel," I said. Grant's face changed. "Natalie, stop." The coordinator went silent for a moment. Then she explained the cancellation fee. "I understand," I said. "Process it now." Grant reached for my phone. I stood and stepped away. "Touch me or my phone and I call the police." He stopped. Lauren began crying. "It happened once," she said. I looked at her. "How long?" She stared at the floor. Grant answered too quickly. "Tonight was the first time." I picked up the second wine glass and held it toward him. "This glass has lipstick on it. The dishwasher is half full. Her overnight bag is in the guest room. Try again." Either of them spoke. I called the caterer, then the florist, then the photographer, the bakery, the rental company, the string quartet, and the hotel where we had reserved rooms for out-of-town guests. With every cancellation, Grant became more desperate. "We can postpone." "A cancel." "We can go to counseling." "Cancel." "I made a mistake." "Cancel." Lauren whispered, "You're destroying everything." I closed the wedding folder. "No," I said. "I'm refusing to marry what you destroyed." By 11 that night, the wedding no longer existed. I packed 1 suitcase with clothes, my passport, my laptop, family photographs, and every important document I could find. Grant stood in the bedroom doorway. "Where are you going?" "I don't know yet." "Please don't leave like this." I looked at the bed. There is no good way to leave a room after finding your future inside it with someone else. Then I noticed something on the dresser. A white envelope with my name written on it. The handwriting was not Grant's. It was Lauren's. I picked it up. She moved so fast that I knew it mattered. "That's nothing," she said. I opened it. Inside was a copy of a wire transfer request for $90,000 from my business savings account. The receiving company was called Mercer Holdings Group. Grant's last name was Mercer. My stomach turned cold. The affair suddenly became smaller than the document in my hand. I looked at Grant. "What is this?" His face lost all color. Lauren stopped crying. That was the moment I understood they were not only sleeping together. They were planning something. I placed the document in my suitcase. Grant blocked the bedroom door. "You're confused. That is related to the wedding. My company savings are not related to the wedding. It was temporary. You signed my name." He said nothing. I took out my phone and began recording. "Move away from the door." Grant's eyes dropped to the screen. He stepped aside at 4:40 the next morning. I drove away while the city was still dark. I did not go to my mother's house. I did not call friends. I did not post anything online. I checked into a small hotel under my middle name and turned off location sharing. Then I called the only person I trusted with financial fraud, my older brother, Daniel. Daniel worked as a federal forensic accountant in Washington, D.C. We were not especially close, but he had one quality I needed that morning. He did not panic. When I told him what I found, he asked only one question. Do they know you have the document? Wes. Then assume they are deleting evidence right now. Daniel told me not to contact Grant or Lauren again. He asked me to photograph every page of the wire transfer request and upload it to a secure folder. Then he told me to call my bank's fraud department and freeze all business transfers. By 7:15 am, my accounts were locked. At 7:22, someone tried to move $89,800. The transfer failed. The bank representative asked whether I recognized the device. I did. It was Grant's laptop. That was the first shock after the affair. The second came 10 minutes later. There had been 6 smaller transfers over the previous 4 months. Each one was below $10,000. Each one went to a different vendor, a lighting supplier, a furniture wholesaler, a consulting company, a marketing firm. All of them were fake. Together, the transfers totaled $47,000. My wedding had not only been a celebration to Grant, it had been cover. He knew my staff and I were distracted. He knew large deposits and vendor payments were moving through our accounts. He believed small fraudulent withdrawals would disappear inside the noise. Daniel checked the company names. 3 were registered to post office boxes. 1 was linked to Grant's cousin. Another shared an address with Lauren's small event planning business. I sat on the hotel floor staring at the screen. I remembered every time Lauren had volunteered to help organize invoices. I remembered Grant offering to handle wedding deposits because I was too busy. They had not fallen into an affair. They had built a partnership. My phone filled with messages. Grant apologized. Lauren begged me not to involve our families. Grant said the money was an investment. Lauren said she had no idea what he was doing. Then Grant sent a message that made the entire plan clear. You promised we would build a future together. I only moved money that would eventually belong to both of us. I read it twice. He believed marriage would protect him. Once we were married, he could call the stolen money a shared decision. He could claim I had authorized the transfers. He could use our joint financial life to bury the evidence. The wedding date was not romantic to him. It was a deadline. Daniel asked me to check my credit reports. I found 2 business credit applications I had never submitted. Both used my social security number. One had been approved for a $75,000 line of credit. The email address on the application belonged to Lauren. I finally cried. Not because Grant had cheated. Not even because Lauren had lied. I cried because I realized how carefully they had studied me. They knew my signature. They knew my passwords. They knew which questions the bank would ask. They knew when I traveled, when I worked late, and when I was too exhausted to examine every statement. Betrayal is frightening when it is emotional. It is terrifying when it is organized. Daniel arrived that afternoon. He brought a small scanner, 2 laptops, and the expression he wore when he had already decided somebody was in serious trouble. We spent 6 hours reviewing bank records. At 9:30 p.m., he found the wedding invoice that connected everything. Lauren's event planning company had billed my business $12,000 for corporate launch coordination. My company had never hired her. The invoice number matched one of the hidden wedding contracts. Daniel leaned back. They used your business to fund part of the wedding, then routed the money into her company. So I paid her to help steal from me. Yes. I laughed once, but there was nothing funny in it. Then Daniel found something worse. Mercer Holdings Group had signed a preliminary contract to purchase a lakefront property outside Asheville. The deposit was due 3 days after my wedding. The property was not meant for Grant and me. The contract listed Grant and Lauren as future occupants. They were planning to buy a house together using my money. I felt the room tilt. Daniel closed the laptop. No, you understand why they are scared. I did. The affair was not an accident. I was not the woman Grant loved and betrayed in a moment of weakness. I was financing the life he planned to have after he finished using me. We called an attorney named Rachel Monroe, a former prosecutor who specialized in financial crimes. Rachel listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "Do not confront them. Do not threaten them. Let them believe you are devastated and confused. I am devastated. Good, they will underestimate you." Rachel helped me file a police report and preserve the bank records. She also contacted the credit bureaus and began the process of disputing the fraudulent accounts. Then she asked whether Grant had access to my townhouse. "His name is on the lease," I said. "Your valuables. Most are still there. Do you have cameras?" 1 camera faced the living room. I opened the security app. Grant and Lauren were inside. Lauren sat on the sofa with her head in her hands. Grant was pacing. The audio was clear. "She froze the account," he said. Lauren looked up. "How? She must have seen the transfer. You said she never checked those accounts." "She didn't before." Lauren stood. "What about the house deposit?" "I'll handle it." "With what money?" Grant lowered his voice. "We need her back. Once she calms down, I can convince her not to press charges." Lauren stared at him. "And us. There is no us if we go to prison." Lauren slapped him. I watched from the hotel room, feeling strangely calm. For months, they had believed they controlled the story. Now fear was turning them against each other. Rachel recorded the security footage. Then Grant said something I will never forget. If she won't come back, we make her look unstable. We say she authorized everything and changed her mind after catching us. Lauren asked, will anyone believe that? Grant smiled. They will if we show them the messages. What messages? The ones I saved from her therapy year. I stopped breathing. 3 years earlier, after my father died, I had struggled with anxiety and insomnia. Grant had encouraged me to text him whenever I felt overwhelmed. He had saved those private messages. Now he planned to use my grief as evidence that I was unreliable. Rachel's voice hardened. Save that clip in 3 separate places. We did. The next morning, I sent Grant one message. I need time. Do not contact my family or employees. He replied immediately. I love you. We can fix this. I stared at those words and finally understood that some people use love the way criminals use gloves. Not to care. To avoid leaving fingerprints. For the next 6 days, I let Grant believe I might return. I answered slowly. I said I was confused. I said I did not want a scandal. I said I needed to understand the money before making any decisions. Every message was approved by Rachel. Grant became cooperative. He sent documents he thought supported his story. Most of them were altered badly. Dates did not match. Signatures were copied from old contracts. One spreadsheet showed payments made on days when I was in the hospital with my mother. Lauren contacted me separately. She claimed Grant manipulated her. She said the affair began because he told her our relationship was already over. Then she offered to provide evidence against him. I agreed not to expose her. I did not reply. 2 hours later, Grant sent me screenshots of Lauren insulting me. They were both trying to trade the other for safety. Rachel called it the collapse phase. I called it justice warming up. Meanwhile, the wedding guests were asking questions. I had sent one simple email. The wedding has been canceled due to circumstances that make the marriage impossible. Please respect my privacy. Grant told his family I had suffered a breakdown. Lauren told friends I had become jealous and controlling. For a few days, their version spread faster than mine. Then Grant made a mistake. He contacted my largest client. He claimed I was emotionally unstable and might abandon the project. He offered to protect the client's investment by taking control of my company temporarily. The client called me. Her name was Evelyn Shaw, the chief executive of a hotel group. She had known me for 7 years. Natalie, she said, your fiancé just tried to take over your business. Former fiancé? There was a pause. Tell me what you need. I explained only that a fraud investigation was underway. Evelyn sent me every email Grant had written. In one message, he claimed to be a silent co-owner of my company. In another, he attached a partnership agreement with my forged signature. That document increased the case from theft to attempted corporate fraud. Rachel smiled when she saw it. He is helping us. The police asked us not to announce the investigation yet. They wanted more evidence and a clear chain connecting Grant, Lauren, and the false companies. So we created a trap. I told Grant I was willing to meet at the canceled wedding venue. I said I wanted to discuss a private settlement before our families learned about the missing money. He agreed immediately. The venue's ballroom was empty when I arrived. 2 weeks earlier, I had imagined walking through those doors in a white dress. Now I walked in wearing a navy suit with a recorder hidden in my handbag. Rachel waited in a service room with 2 detectives. Grant entered first. He looked exhausted but still handsome. That had always been part of his power. Even when he lied, he looked like someone people wanted to trust. Lauren arrived 5 minutes later. They did not sit together. I placed copies of the transfers on the table. I want the truth, I said. Grant leaned forward. The money was for us. Then why is Lauren listed on the Asheville property? He glanced at her. She looked away. Grant changed direct. She handled the paperwork. I did not know she added herself. Lauren laughed bitterly. You told me to. He turned on her. Be careful. I let them argue. Then I placed the forged partnership agreement beside the transfers. Grant stopped talking. You sent this to my client, I said. I was trying to protect the company. You claimed you owned it. I would after we married. No. You would have been my husband. That is not the same thing. He rubbed his face. Natalie, listen to me. We got in too deep. The house was supposed to be an investment property. Lauren helped because she understood the wedding contracts. Lauren stared at him. You said we were moving there. I said we might. You said you loved me. Grant's eyes closed. The room went silent. Then Lauren looked at me. He planned everything. Grant stood. She created the invoices. She gave you my passwords, he shouted. You asked for them. I remained seated. They had forgotten I was in the room. Lauren began listing details in anger. The fake vendors. The credit line. The plan to move money after the wedding. The property. The forged signatures. Grant tried to silence her, but every interruption made her speak louder. Finally, I asked the question Rachel needed. Whose idea was it to make me look mentally unstable if I reported the theft? Grant let them froze. Grant looked at me carefully. You recorded us. I did not answer. He lunged across the table for my handbag. The ballroom doors opened. 2 detectives entered. Grant stopped. Lauren began crying before anyone touched her. The lead detective told them they were being detained for questioning related to financial fraud, identity theft, forgery, and conspiracy. Grant looked at me as an officer placed him in handcuffs. You set me up. I stood. No. I gave you a quiet room and let you describe what you did. Lauren whispered my name. I looked at her. She appeared small without the confidence she borrowed from secrets. Please, she said. We were friends. We were. I replied. That is why you knew exactly where to cut. The detectives led them away through the ballroom where we were supposed to dance as husband and wife. I thought I would feel victorious. Instead, I felt tired. Justice does not always feel like fireworks. Sometimes it feels like finally putting down something heavy. The arrests were only the beginning. Grant's family hired an expensive attorney and claimed I had misunderstood business investments. Lauren blamed Grant and offered to cooperate. For 3 months, every week brought another discovery. Grant had forged my signature 14 times. Lauren had created 7 false invoices. They had opened credit accounts, redirected mail, and even drafted a post-wedding agreement that would have given Grant authority over my company if I became medically unable to manage it. The language about medical incapacity was not random. They had collected my old therapy messages to support it. When Rachel showed me the document, I became physically sick. They were not only planning to steal money. They were preparing to take control of my life. The prosecution offered Lauren a reduced sentence if she testified. She accepted. Grant refused every deal. He was convinced he could charm a jury the way he had charmed clients, friends, and me. He was wrong. At trial, the prosecutor displayed the fake invoices one by one. Bank experts explained the transfers. My client testified about the forged partnership agreement. The security recording played Grant's words across the courtroom. We need her back. Once she calms down, I can convince her not to press charges. Then came the ballroom recording. Lauren's voice filled the room as she described the plan in detail. Grant stared straight ahead. When I testified, his attorney tried to portray me as emotional. He asked about my therapy. He asked whether I had ever suffered anxiety. He asked whether grief had affected my judgment. I looked at the jury. Yes, I said. After my father died, I asked for help. That was responsible. Hiding fraud behind someone's grief is not. The attorney changed the subject. The jury deliberated for less than 5 hours. Grant was convicted on multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, forgery, and conspiracy. Lauren had already pleaded guilty. The judge sentenced Grant to prison and ordered restitution. Lauren received a shorter sentence because of her cooperation, but her event planning license was gone, her business collapsed, and every professional contact learned why. I recovered most of the stolen money through frozen accounts and the sale of assets they had purchased. The Asheville house was never completed. The deposit was returned as part of the investigation. Grant's dream home with Lauren became a line in a court exhibit. That was the legal ending. But it was not the emotional ending. For months, I avoided the wedding dress hanging in the townhouse. After Grant's arrest, I moved into a smaller home and stored the dress in a closet. One Saturday morning, I finally opened the garment bag. The dress was beautiful. It had a fitted lace bodice and a long satin skirt. I had imagined my mother fastening the buttons while Lauren stood beside me. For a moment, I mourned the woman who bought it. She believed patience could fix every problem. She believed loyalty was guaranteed by history. She believed love meant giving someone access to every part of her life. I no longer hated that woman. She had trusted because she was honest. Their betrayal belonged to them, not to her. I donated the dress to a nonprofit that provided formal clothing to women rebuild their lives after domestic abuse. A month later, the director sent me a photograph. A young woman had worn the dress at a small courthouse wedding. She was smiling so widely that I barely recognized the gown. I printed the picture and placed it in my office. Not as a reminder of what I lost, as proof that something beautiful can survive the wrong story and become part of a better one. My company also survived. Evelyn recommended me to 2 national hotel groups. Within a year, my firm doubled in size. I promoted my operations manager, hired a financial controller, and changed every internal security system. I no longer confused trust with the absence of safeguards. Daniel and I became closer. He still called every Sunday and pretended he was checking my bookkeeping, even when we both knew he simply wanted to hear my voice. 2 years after the trial, I received a letter from Grant. He wrote that prison had changed him. He said he finally understood the damage he caused. He asked me to visit. I did not. I sent the letter to Rachel and asked whether I was legally required to respond. She said no, so I shredded it. Lauren wrote once too. Her letter was shorter. She said she missed our friendship and wished she could return to the night before everything began. I almost answered. Then I remembered something important. People often say they want to go back before they hurt you. What they really want is to return to the time when you did not know who they were. I placed her letter in the same shredder. 3 years after the canceled wedding, I stood in the renovated lobby of a historic hotel my company had redesigned. The opening celebration was held under a restored glass ceiling. Music filled the room. My employees stood around me with champagne, laughing and taking photographs. To Natalie, she said, who knows how to rebuild without pretending nothing was broken? Everyone applauded. I looked up at the glass ceiling. Hundreds of fractured pieces had been removed, repaired, and set into stronger frames. The damage had not been hidden. It had become part of the design. That night, A reporter asked whether the public scandal had made me afraid to trust again. I thought about the question before answering. No, I said. It taught me to trust myself first. That was the revenge Grant never expected. I did not spend my life trying to ruin him. I did not chase Lauren through every consequence. I did not need to. They lost their freedom, their reputations, their money, and each other because they built everything on lies. I built again on truth. And here is what I learned. Walking away is not weakness when the room is full of people who benefit from your silence. Canceling the wedding did not destroy my future. It rescued it. The night I found my fiancé with my best friend, I thought I was watching my life end. But I was really watching the door open. And this time, I was the one who chose where it led.